Illumination, the folks who brought you those sweet little yellow hench dudes, is back with their second crack at one of the most iconic video game franchises of all time, the Super Mario Galaxy movie. Their first Super Mario Bros. Movie was a real lesson in simple and efficient adaptation, but that is a job that gets a little tougher when you expand from a world to a galaxy. I'm Clint Gage, and this is my review of the Super Mario Galaxy movie.
There's a huge universe out there. With a lot of galaxies.
The great and sometimes terrible thing about adapting something that is truly beloved to the big screen is that it has the potential to be just as good a movie as it was in a different form. Now, the trick in reskinning these iconic books or comics or video games or whatever they were before they became movies is figuring out what made them popular in the first place and focusing on that. And there's no small amount of pressure in that decision. It's an important one. The most important one, in fact, because if you get that wrong, nothing else in the movie is going to work.
And you can jump.
Oh, I got this. No problem.
And to that end, the Super Mario Galaxy movie focuses squarely on all the stuff. This movie is packed wall to wall with Easter eggs and references and what seems like every character Nintendo as a company has ever dreamed up and rendered as, at minimum, an 8-bit sprite. In fact, there are entire locations in this movie, crowded and bustling spots we didn't get to see in the first film, that are used as devices for just dropping in countless characters on screen as blink and you'll miss them cameos.
Who is this?
The look of the movie should make even the casual, old-school Mario fans happy as well. There are design elements with built-in, story-based reasons for existing that organically call up the original NES game's side-scrolling look, even down to the 8-bit animation. And the way Brian Tyler's score riffs on practically every iconic piece of music Mario Brothers games have ever featured is a cheat code to making me grin. Now, there's even a little nod to the 1993 film, with a pair of characters traveling through a weird-looking digital wall and arriving in a clearly Blade Runner-inspired world on the other side. So, all that to say, every base is covered where the references and Easter eggs and subtle nods to hyper-specific corners of the Mario games are concerned. And that's cool. Right now, there are a handful of elements that had me saying, oh, hey, look, it's that guy. I remember beating that level when I was a kid. I said it out loud in a theater, probably annoying the guy sitting next to me, but it's still pretty cool. So, that level of this video game adaptation is cleared. Job well done. But the princess of making a truly good movie is in another castle. Yes, Illumination, directors Aaron Horvath and Michael Jelenic, writer Matthew Fogel, and everybody else on the creative team made a fun-to-look-at collection of Mario's greatest hits. But all those bells and whistles just make a movie okay. Those are the things that show a pedigree, that the creators have done their homework, and we can trust them with the brand and a bunch of characters that we actually care about. But what you need to make a movie better than that is, quite simply, something else to care about. There's not traditionally a ton of story with Super Mario Bros. There's lore, of course, but nothing that you can really directly adapt into a whole movie. You know, what was so savvy about the Super Mario Bros. Movie from 2023 was that underneath the Rainbow Roads and the Kong armies was a story about two brothers out to prove themselves as worth a damn, to prove all the doubters wrong and to stick together while they're doing it. It's a simple and relatable, overly familiar even, story that we've all seen 100 times, but it should be. When you're pipe warping to the Mushroom Kingdom to fight a fire-breathing turtle. When those are the stakes, stick with an emotional plot that we can get behind and not have too many questions about, and just reskin that as a Mario Brothers story. There's a built-in connection to all audiences right there, dressed up as a classic video game by people who clearly love it. That's what carried the 2023 movie, but that's also what's very much missing in this one. Yes, of course, there is a plot in the Super Mario Galaxy movie, and it's one that ought to have an emotional weight to it. Bowser Jr. wants to rescue his father, and he wants to do it in an impressive way. And in the process, the entire web of characters gets pulled together in a way that, from an A to B to C story point of view, it all makes sense. Mario and Luigi obviously have their history with Bowser that they need to move on from. Peach finds another adventure to go on that might give her answers about her past. And Bowser himself deals with some issues he has with the type of father he was to Bowser Jr., and so on and so on and so on. Everybody's got a little something going on. Now, any one of those dynamics could have done the trick, but the film is so crowded, none of those relationships have a chance to stand out from the others. And as a result, the movie doesn't really give you a reason to care.
Oh no!
Even a burgeoning aw shucks romance between Mario and Peach is brought up and forgotten. Toad actually says it best when he's first introduced to Yoshi.
So some dinosaur just shows up and he's now part of the group.
Yeah, Toad, unfortunately, that's just going to be how it works with this sequel. This is the biggest challenge with expanding something like this. You risk missing out on some of the characters that were great the first go-round in favor of tacking on the new ones. There's just not enough room for it all. I wanted more Donkey Kong, but instead I got a little bit of Rosalina. It's a real double-edged sword, this movie. On the one hand, all of these Mario references are exactly what the movie needs. But on the other hand, there's no focus to them. And that issue even intrudes on the story as well. There are a few scenes that feel lifted straight out of other movies. One in particular that's an obvious riff on two very popular animated movies rolled into one. Now that gives the impression that sequences were kind of reverse engineered to fit the references in, as opposed to figuring out how to get the references to work organically in the story. But when other films have done it recently and frankly better, that strategy can backfire. But to get back to some positives for a moment, I will say that the action in this movie is actually pretty good. This is something that Illumination really excels at. The Despicable Me series, Minions included, has some of the wildest animated action set pieces, and the fight scenes here are genuinely fun. Peach and Toad kicking ass in a casino feels closer to the Matrix sequels than a kid's movie. And the first encounter with Bowser Jr. has some 3-against-1 wuxia flavor to it as well. This fight is so intricate, in fact, that I found myself wondering how a guy who was just a plumber a few years ago got so good at fisticuffs. Now that obviously didn't ruin the experience for me, but it did get dangerously close to exemplifying what happens when there's no story to care about. Because if those are the little threads that you want to pull on, then you are not a fan of this movie. Ultimately, the Super Mario Galaxy movie suffers through the same pitfalls that a lot of sequels do. Even though successful franchising is kind of Illumination's whole deal, as most of their movies have at least one sequel, and this one definitely gets bigger, as a good sequel ought to do. But if the title of the Super Mario Brothers movie indicates a movie about the sibling plumbers, the Super Mario Galaxy movie tells us this movie is about everything else. And in the balancing act of working every bit of Mario that fans might expect while grounding the story in something relatable and worth caring about, the filmmakers lean more towards the former. Again, that's not without its charm. Even the custom Illumination logo before the movie starts is an original Donkey Kong reference starring the Minions. That got me in a good mood before the lights were even all the way dimmed. But that is what I meant when I started this review talking about the great and terrible potential inherent in these movies. The fact that this group of filmmakers clearly knows and loves the Mario Galaxy is great. The issue is that that charm alone is what saves this movie from being really forgettable. Super Mario Galaxy movie is getting a 6. It's okay. It really is. Okay is the best word I can think of to describe both the quality of this film and my reaction to all the choices they made while making the film. It's like, you're doing that? Okay. Now, if you're into wall-to-wall references, you're gonna love this movie. It's bigger and shinier than the first, visually speaking as well. While it loses points for not engaging in a strong emotional core like its predecessor, the Super Mario Galaxy movie racks up some extra lives by stuffing Easter eggs into the runtime to the point of bursting. It's fun seeing all that stuff on screen, but without some kind of relatable story thriving underneath those references, it's not as effective as it could be. So that is what I thought of the Super Mario Galaxy movie. Let me know if you're excited to see it in the comments below, and for more Mario, more movie reviews, and more things that are stuffed to the point of bursting, be sure to subscribe to IGN wherever you like to watch.